Not through this? Oh, there it goes. Well, good evening. I'm Kevin Gettings with WSOS 103.9 here in St. Johns County and St. Augustine in Ponte Vedra. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. So my job is fairly simple. I'm going to be the guy with the microphone going around and giving you the opportunity to ask these gentlemen behind me questions about beach nourishment here locally. So we'll get to that in just a second. I want to make a couple of little announcements, if you will. In that back corner, back right corner, as you start walking toward the back area, there are some surveys there that you can fill out regarding this issue. There's also easement documents, so you can do that. And also know that these folks and other people will be available for you to ask questions one-on-one privately after we get through with this part of our little information session tonight, okay? So in addition to you all that are here in person, and we appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here, we also have folks joining us by Zoom. That's what the camera's for in the back. It's only being broadcast to Zoom folks, and there's already a number of participants there. So when we get to the point of asking questions, I'll sort of take some questions from Zoom and then obviously get every question that you all have that you would like to have answered tonight, okay? So with that said, the two gentlemen that are sitting up here tonight, and by the way, this is our second of 3 meetings. We had one meeting last month. We will have one more meeting a week from tomorrow night, just in case you have friends and neighbors who are unable to attend or you'd like to come and join us for another meeting. So to our left is Damon Douglas. He's Coastal Manager of Disaster Recovery for St. Johns County Government. And then to the right is Al Browder, who is a Senior Engineer with Olson Associates. And I'm going to turn it over to Damon.
Thank you. Everyone hear me? Okay, great. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming out or logging on. And we'll try and keep this short, have some question and answer, and then we can follow up with one-on-one conversations. So basically tonight we're going to discuss what is the project that we're talking about. When could the project happen, and what are some of the components that tasks that are still to be done on the path towards realizing that beach project. So basically, we're trying to restore the beaches in Ponte Vedra Beach. There's been a long period of erosion. Storm damages are really the biggest culprit in this area. And an effort was brought forward by the community, a partnership with the county, to come up with a plan to restore the beaches, and then have a plan where it could be possible to maintain them into the future. So as you can see, really Hurricanes Matthew and Irma were a big wake-up call for the area. Lots of damage, especially Irma, which was followed very closely by a long-term nor'easter. A little bit more intense than what we're experiencing right now. But on that storm-damaged coast, the nor'easter just really wore into it. 600,000 cubic yards just from the two major hurricanes. A cubic yard is roughly what the box that a dishwasher comes in, if you've ever received one or got one from Home Depot. So that's about it, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. Almost 2.5 million cubic yards of sand since 1986. Those are some of the older surveys that are available for looking at. The current beach conditions, they come and they go, but they're not really optimal for protecting the upland infrastructure. So again, we're talking about the entirety of the beaches in Ponte Vedra Beach. So it goes from the Duval County line all the way down to the oceanfront properties of the Guantanamo Research Reserve, so that Guana Park along the ocean front. For those of you who are interested in DEP monuments, every 1,000 foot of the coastline is divided into, there's a survey marker, so that when DEP is looking at long-term changes, they have some kind of reference. So this is 1 to 46.2. And what we're talking about is placing roughly 2 million cubic yards of sand in that area. So it's a substantial amount of sand to restore damages and, potentially give a buffer to help with future erosion until it's time to come together and discuss doing some other type of project. So following the being set to this mission after the storm damages, discussions from the community at public meetings with the board, county staff has worked with the community. We have had surveys. We met here previously in this room back in 2018 to set up a municipal service taxing district to pay for some of the work to get the project on board. No monies were ever levied from that taxing district, but it was first introduced to the community in that series of meetings. So we had this goal of an engineered beach. We brought Olson Associates on board to help us get in place the necessary permits and permissions to do the project. So there's various different agencies that you have to go through, especially bringing sand from offshore. If you're going to go out in federal waters and get sand, it's quite an endeavor to get the necessary permits and then leases from the federal government to use that sand. But we have all of those in place now. We've looked for funding. We've said that we would, and we have. There's over $30 million that's been secured from the state. Most recently, an unprecedented $25 million special appropriation towards the project, which really pushed it over the edge so that we're here now, discussing moving forward with the project. The county has also, throughout the past few budget cycles, allocated over $8 million towards the project. So we need to look beyond getting the project built. Once it's built, the permitting agencies have a requirement that you monitor the sand, where it is, where it's moved, its effect on endangered species, sea turtles, that type of thing. So there's substantial monitoring that goes on. And as part of being a FEMA engineered beach, which would then qualify for federal recovery funding if it's damaged by a storm, is that you have a maintenance plan so that you are planning towards the possibility of repairs in the future. So we have been, since we've been working on this over the past 3 years, getting better and better data as we're watching more near-term changes. But since the first real comprehensive study that was done on the beach, and that is that it goes all the way out at least about half a mile offshore to what they call the depth of closure, to look at, what are the contours of the beach so they can determine the amount of sand there, where the sand lies. And we're able to look at that today as we take another survey to kind of look at the changes that have been in place. So over 1.5 million cubic yards of sand lost. But we've also noticed that there's sand that drifts down from the Army Corps project in Duval County, in Jacksonville Beach. So, zooming in on a lot more critical information that enables us to better design the project and move it forward. So again, the simple thing is restore the dunes, increase the flat part of the beach so that the waves break further away from the dunes and the homes. And that gives you the better storm resiliency. So we have a very technical drawing here. This is the way that we always look at it from an engineering perspective of where's the sand going to go, what are the different dimensions, but this is compressed for us to look at in an engineering type perspective. Our engineers are used to looking at that. This is more what it looks like in reality. So basically they've taken this picture and compressed it on the horizontal axis so that you can get the whole thing on there and you can see in better minute detail the changes on the vertical. So when you see slopes here on a dune and it looks like there's a steep slope at the end of the green dune there, it's not that steep. It looks more like this slope. The slopes are dictated by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to make sure that sea turtles can climb up and the turtle hatchlings can climb down. So, none of the angles in this project should be extreme. But anyhow, this does give us a good point that we can talk about it, reference it. That right now the dunes are permitted to be at a 13-foot elevation above sea level. This is where we've seen a lot of the natural dunes in the northern area. A large part of the project, we realized that the dunes were higher before in the southern section. We are looking at that. Is it appropriate to have a couple of zones where, if there were higher dunes, should we come back and put a dune that's higher in that area? So as we're getting the actual construction plans, working on the finer details, we may modify some of the southern areas to cover more of those escarpments that we have. We also see there's a flat part of the beach there. The upper berm is what it's referred to, but it's really the towel space. It's the recreation space. So that's at about 8 foot above sea level. You can see underneath there's a heavy black line, and that's really the current shape of the beach. I believe this is, 2019?
Well, this is from the permits, yeah.
Yes, okay. So in some parts of the beach, where you stand at the high tide line, there will be a lot more sand in that place, and the beach will slope out so that the high tide line is then further away from the beach. As you can see with the dashed line there, where it intersects with the heavy black line, you can see if you look at the access there, we're going to move it out, in some areas. This is not representative of every section of the beach, but in some of the more badly eroded areas, it could go out 200 feet. And then, very quickly, you'll see it's a start to erode, and as it erodes, some of the sand in that slope in the front moves down underwater. If you see in the bottom right-hand corner, prediction of equilibrated profile. And I really enjoyed learning that word, equilibrated. But basically, that's when the sand moves from the upper beach down into the part of the beach where it does a very important job. As you sit there and you watch the waves break, they break along rows of sandbars that get deeper and deeper. The larger waves break on the outside sandbars. So in order to be able to put sand out there, we can't really, come and dump it there. We have to build it up on the shore, knowing that it's going to get pulled down into those areas. So where's the sand coming from? So we have a borrow area that's offshore, very close to the southern end of the project, that has beach quality sand. We've gotten samples of the sand, done all of the different things that we have to do to make sure that the sand is workable and that there's no a very, very low possibility of any kind of historic resources or anything. It's safe to take sand out of the shoal. We've done subsurface, investigations of all different kinds of things. It was nearly a 3-year process to permit using this sand. So this sand, and you'll see a little bit closer later on, basically a ship goes and gets the sand from this shoal that's basically under 30 or 40 foot of water and sails towards the shore where it's then pumped on the shore. So this is what the ship looks like. In the center picture there, that will be dragged along the bottom and it sucks up sand and puts it inside the ship. The ship will come to shore where there will be a pipeline that goes from the dry part of the beach out roughly a quarter mile into the water. The ship will connect to that pipeline and then start pumping the sand onto the shore. It'll be shaped into place. The water will run out of it. It'll be water and sand mixed together. The water runs out, the sand's left. They push it up into the shape that we intend to be there, that we feel would have the best performance. which looks kind of like this. So you can see after the pipe comes on the beach, there's an elbow, so they'll add sections of pipe as it moves down the beach. They build a little earthen dam with the sand where the sand can dewater, the water comes out, and then the bulldozers will actually form the dunes there. So this is a much quicker process than bringing sand in trucks from upland mines onto the beach. One of those hoppers is, I'm looking it out so he can tell me if I'm wrong, was the equivalent of 166 truckloads. So it's a much faster process. The last project that the county did ourselves, not with the Army Corps, the whole thing was done in 3.5 months, all of the sand placed, and that was 750,000 cubic yards. So it's a matter of a few months. The operation goes on 24/7. They limit how fast they can move down the beach at night so that they can protect the beach and any kind of impacts. But it doesn't stay in front of any given property for very long. They're building the beach. As they build the beach, they add pipe, they move the dewatering process down. Once it gets far enough away from where the ship has been bringing it on shore, the ship will start coming to a separate area, and they'll do it all over. So they'll leapfrog along the shoreline to get the whole thing built. So really, you won't see pipe in any given location more than, say, a week to 4 weeks. And that really depends upon weather conditions. Obviously, like we're having right now, they can't effectively place sand. So if we get a nor'easter, they're shut down for a short period of time. You know, if there's any kind of mechanical failures that can shift the schedule. But we'll have the contractor providing to us a map of the whole area showing, breaking it down into sections and when they expect to be working in any of those sections. And then every week, they'll update it. So if they move more quickly, there's a nor'easter, they move more slowly, they'll update all of those so that people can anticipate when is it going to be in front of my house. And as you see the pipe is, you know, maybe this tall, 2.5, 3 feet. They'll be required to place sand ramps over the pipe so that you can still, on the section where they're not actual heavy equipment working, you'll still be able to walk over the pipe and enjoy the use of the ocean. This is what a finished beach project looks like. Just a typical project, and you can see this is already started on the shoreline. You can see the wavy line on the edge of the sand. It's already started to equilibrate in this area. Just a little bit of what to expect. You know, there will be some tracks where they've put the sand in place that will smooth out over time. So what is the schedule to go from here? So in the next 2 to 4 months, we'll be in the process of surveys that we'll talk about a little bit later and gathering remaining easements. We have, I believe, the last time I saw it updated, and it may have changed by now, 272 out of 218 necessary easements. So that's an important item on the critical path, so that we have enough permissions, enough area of the beach that we can actually work on. If it's every other house, we can't really, that's not feasible to build a beach project like that. So once we get to the point where we can go, we're already starting to build the contract documents. We're moving as fast as we can to get it advertised. So as soon as we have a go, we've got enough easements, everyone's comfortable with us putting it out, the board says, yes, do it. We will put this out for a construction bid. We'll have a substantial document that tells exactly how they have to build the project, or the specifications of how they build what's in the plans. And then companies will bid on, you know, they can do that for this amount of money. That's a 3 to 4 month process. As we advertise it, they have time to respond. We receive the bids, we get the approval from the Board of County Commissioners to accept the lowest responsible bidder, and then we go through the process of executing contract documents and getting construction bonds and insurance papers and all of those things, 3 to 4 months, and then it will take approximately 2 months for the contractor to mobilize. They'll give us a better idea of their schedule as soon as we have executed a contract. Then they'll say, this is exactly when we think we're going to do what. And then, like I said, 5 to 6 months we anticipate this project taking to be put into place, considering fairly good weather and good equipment life. So another item that we have to do is per state law. The state says that if you're going to do a project that's going to place sand seaward of the high tide line, you have to memorialize where that high tide line was. We've, since our last meeting, received updated direction from the DEP to make this a simpler process, cleaner to them, is that an erosion control line needs to be established along the full project length. So it's a ministerial function. All of the projects in St. Johns County, around the state, where they build a beach like this, they all have erosion control lines. It's been a state requirement for many, many years, at least since the 70s, if not before.
Started in the 70s.
And really since this Florida became a state, the state has ownership of everything that's below the high tide line. As that line moves, the beach flows like this. You'll have a high spot out in front of your house, and then the next week there's a low spot. It's wherever that elevation is of the average for where the high tides are, is where that line is. So as the beach does this, the line goes in and out. And so day to day, that actual property line changes. We have done a survey on August 29th, exactly where those elevations lined up. And the DEP will hold a workshop to explain the process more in detail than what I just gave you, talk about the project. We'll again go through the details of what's going to be built where. They'll have a copy of the survey. We'll have it, on a larger scale so you can look and see where it is at your property. Time for question and answers, and then immediately the same meeting, they adjourn the workshop and go into a public hearing where we again describe what is the project, what is the ECL, that type of thing. And then at that point, if anybody has any legal objections, like you have a deed that has been continuously held since Florida was a state or something like that, the state of Florida has previously given you a deed that you own further out through some kind of special legislative action, that's the opportunity to present that type of thing. I've not seen those type of things happen, but they are within the realm of possibility. They can happen, and so the state makes sure that there's a comment period for you to bring those type of issues forward so that they can modify the process. This is October 26th at 6 p.m. at the Guantanamo Visitor Center at Guana River Road. So easements. In order to do this kind of intensive work on the beach, as you know, there's already, public access on the beach. People are out on the beach. Lifeguards are out on the beach. Turtle Patrol's out on the beach. But really to construct to have heavy equipment on the property, moving sand around, it requires an easement from the property owners to allow that work. We already started the process of getting these easements following Ian and Nicole. And the intention is the easement is written in such a way that it allows projects like this. And if we come back to repair this project at some point in the future, through a period of public engagement, we find out what are we going to do, how much is it going to cost, where's the money coming from, that type of thing. Then after that's all settled, then we have direction to move forward. We could potentially use these same easements. That's the intention of them, is that we can respond quickly in the case that there is, a storm damage, and we have the opportunity to quickly, on FEMA's timelines, come and repair a beach, that we already have the permissions to do it. It doesn't take 4 months to go out and get easements from everyone. So, and I want to stress again, it's not a substitute for future public input. This is not to say, that the county would move forward with the project without input from the citizens if there was going to be any drastic changes to it or any kind of financial commitment. As we know right now, we have a lot of state money. Hopefully, as we move forward, each time that we do it, we will be, that successful again. So we do have a staff member in the back, Kelly McTaggart. Some of you may know, you've talked to him on the phone, and he can help if you are one of the folks that have not granted an easement, or if you just want to talk about the easement, any issues that you have with the easement. We can talk about it tonight, and he is prepared to execute easements for those that so wish. So funding, that is one of the large parts for bringing you together. Our estimate for this beach restoration, just the construction part of it, is $40 million. We have $30.2 million pledged from the state. $8.2 has been budgeted by the county. There's a potential shortfall in construction, $1.6 million. Now again, we said we'll put this out to bid. So we're not guessing at the absolute lowest that we think this project's going to come in at. We're also not overly inflating it. We're giving a good estimate with some level of contingency. It's a very fluid market, no pun intended, but it's volatile. It depends on diesel and other projects that are competing for the resources. There's only a handful of companies that have the equipment to pull off these type of construction projects. So, we've just had storms, there's a recovery plan in place. If at the time there are other projects, they might bid higher to say, we're going to take the one that comes in, accepts our high bid. If we are lucky and we come into a window where there's not a lot of competing work, then, we should get a low bid. We've been fairly lucky with some of the projects that we've had where they've come in way under. But we have to budget for the possibility that there's going to be a construction shortfall. So that's part of what we're here to talk about tonight. There's also, as we mentioned before, the requirement that we monitor the conditions of the beach and how it's affecting the environment. This has a cost. We also have to be planning for the potential future activities to expand the permitted area of sand so that we have sand for more projects into the future if we want to keep this up in the long term. So there are, as I mentioned, municipal service taxing units that are in place. The community came to the board to talk about setting up a district. We worked together in the summer of 2018 to initially put get input on the taxing units. They were created in 2019 as actually one MSTU. And then in 21, the MSTU was amended to have a north and a south section. The northern 3 miles, the southern 6 miles. This all happened at public hearings in front of the Board of County Commissioners that were publicly noticed. But again, no millage has ever been levied to any of these MSTUs. They show up on the tax bill with a millage of 0. So the board has discussed this. They've asked us, what does it take to make up these potential shortfalls, which we don't know what they are yet, but the budgetary numbers would be in the northern 3 miles, that Ponte Vedra 1 MSTU is 0.39 mils. So that covers 20% of the potential sand because the northern 3 miles needs less sand. As we mentioned earlier, sand drifts down from the Army Corps projects in Duval, and that beach kind of has it gets nourished a lot more unintentionally from those other projects. It's more stable. Also, it's a third of the total 9 miles roughly that has to be monitored. So 1/3 of those costs would be allocated up there. Once we have real numbers as we move forward, we'll talk about that, then the board decides at public hearings as part of the budget process what they will actually levy in that year. So this is an up to 0.39 mils. The board wants to know if you're willing to pay up to 0.39 mils, and in that southern 6 miles, up to 0.75 mils. So that has a lot more sand, the beaches are more heavily eroded, and it is a longer section to monitor. You know, a lot of that monitoring is professional staff on the ground in ATVs. So again, I want to stress that again, is that these are budgetary numbers. We have to know, are you willing to be taxed up to this amount? But then as the bills come in, they'll say, what do we need to meet the payment on the construction shortfall and the monitoring expenses based on the contract, and then they can decide that year, what are we actually going to levy and put on the tax bill. That process, the declaration of the maximum millage rates happens in July every year, and then the budget's approved in September. We just had the budget hearing the previous meeting. So here is a sample, an example of what do these numbers mean. So we've just pulled some numbers out of the air for the taxable value of property. So the taxable value is after exemptions, and if you have, if you've owned the property for a long period of time, by state law, the taxable value can only increase by a certain percentage every year. So it's not often equal to the market value of the property. So in the center column is this is what these price points are at the 0.39 mils, which is the maximum for that, and then in the your right hand is the 0.75 mils for the south. So below there we have just a sample that we copied and pasted from the property appraiser website. You can go on there to look at your particular property, and you can see where it discusses the different components of value that go into the valuation for the purpose of taxation. That's why we have a property appraiser. Their sole function to communicate it to the tax collector. And at the bottom of that particular section in your property report will be the taxable value. So this particular property, you can see that it's been held in the same ownership for a period of time. They have deferred tax, even though the market value that the appraiser is guessing at for the property is $5.2 million. It's roughly $1.9 million of taxable value. That's the bottom row in the table that shows if this was in the northern 3 miles, it's $735 a year. If it's in the southern 6 miles, it's $1,413 a year. So your taxable value goes up, and it can go up, it can go down, depending upon market conditions. They go through this exercise every year to set the values. So there are surveys. We have surveys with us tonight. If you want to pick up your survey tonight, you're welcome to do so. You can, execute it. You can say yes or no. I agree or I disagree with these type of things. Is that, we want you to do this project, and that we're asking the board to levy up to this amount, which means tax up to that amount. This is the Ponte Vedra 1, the northern 3 miles, up to the 0.39 mils. We understand that, that easements are necessary to put sand on your property, and to contact us if you'd like to participate in that. MSTU language, identical, different number. The up to 0.75 mils. So a mil is 1/10 of 1%. So 1 mil is, a 1/10 of 1%. So this is 3/4 of a 1/10 of 1%. So next steps, as we talked about, surveys, easements, we have both here to help you with. If you don't pick them up tonight or anyone else, all of the other property owners, everyone will receive them by mail. If people don't get them, they can contact us. If they have any questions, we're perfectly willing to, answer any questions that we can, help in any way that we can. We're standing up a process where folks could use DocuSign to sign the survey if they're not available. Obviously, there's a cost to that on the county, and we would prefer if you do get the paper thing, we'll send you a stamped envelope. Just sign it and send it back. That's the simplest way to do it. But we can help if any of your neighbors, I know a lot of people don't stay here year-round. So if you know anyone that's out, if you want to let them know this is going on, we're reaching out to them. But we want to get the word out. Most important thing in this process is that everyone is informed and has an opportunity to express whether they agree or disagree. So regardless of which way you choose, it's our job to really try and get the word out there. So please help us. If you know that someone doesn't know about it, spread the word. Again, the erosion control line, October 26th at that visitor center on Guana River Road, kind of large facility. And then the Board of County Commissioners, before the end of the year, will look at the surveys and easement information. We're going to try and be well underway with the process of procuring this, ready to just press go if there is the direction to do so. So we're moving as fast as we can, but we anticipate the first meeting in December, the board looking at the responses that we have in surveys and easements. We're asking, the surveys printed on them is, please have these in by December 1st. And I have an Adobe update that will remind me later. Anyhow, that concludes the presentation. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the contact information slide, but it is very insistent that I update Adobe. There we are, magic. So this is the phone number for coastal management. We have some of our staff people here. It rings at multiple phones in the office. We can leave a voicemail. We have a division email address. You can definitely send us questions in writing. We also have a web page on the county site. We are in the process of standing up a separate project page. We have a coastal projects, and then there's several projects that are ongoing in the county. We're going to put links to this information on that page. So a lot of this information, the presentation, and any other information that we find to be useful as we move through this process. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions and answers. Al and I will sit here and try and answer the best we can, and then we'll talk separately.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Roger Mentz, as you know, Damon. I live over at Vickers now, Oak Bridge, but I used to live on the beach at Windermere 1. I'm a member of Sawgrass Country Club and also on the External Affairs Committee of Sawgrass Association. So I have very much an interest in the beach. I've been involved in this project for about 5 years. I think you've done a super job. It's amazing that the funding is up to 38 million, plus 38 million of the 40 expected. That's fabulous. And you and your whole team and certainly should be congratulated, and I personally am very pleased with the way it's coming out. I just have one basic question. The surveys the surveys are only being asked for the homeowners on the east side of Ponte Vedra Boulevard. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, so
Okay.
only the properties that are east of Ponte Vedra Boulevard.
Okay. So the fact that you live on the west side, or even if you are somewhere on Sawgrass Country Club, you don't have to worry about paying any more tax. You don't have to fill out a survey or anything else, right?
That's right, that's
Okay.
right.
Thank you,
That's
Damon.
And I was able to hear him, but it was difficult. Is there any possibility we can get more volume on that microphone, please?
On the wireless.
Just a quick question. The pipe that was on the beach, I didn't quite understand the purpose of the pipe. And is it there forever under the sand, or is it for construction purposes?
It's just for construction purposes. So they're pumping the sand onto the beach, and then they pick up the pipe and move the pipe down. Ah, thank you. I'm kind of hard of hearing. Yes, it is temporary. It's not there under the sand, and they'll move it. They'll use the same pipe over and over again as they go down the beach.
I think you've done a fabulous job, too. We were involved after Matthew donating our 1037 lot for sand. We've got about $500,000 invested in sand, walkover, sand, walkover, sand, walkover. We never did develop the property. We live on the west side now. We also have a condo, which we helped Kelly try to get everyone to sign the easements, which has been difficult. But I feel that people on the west side, as we live now, we still have the two properties on the ocean, because our picture is the one that you're using by the Millen House. That's our property. It is lost about 200 feet, and now you're saying that the easement will keep inching up for your purposes to keep taking more of the land that we're paying enormous amount of taxes on. But why is that not shared with everyone in the MSD? Longboat Key, we've had property there since '90. They've been doing this taxing since the '80s. That does the beach renourishment every 3 years. Everyone pays, and no one has a problem with it because everyone wants the beach to remain there. It's been going on a long time. This is great. We've made progress. But I do think, like with Michler's, thousands of people come. They're not paying any kind of parking. So they come, his friends come from Orange Park, from Jacksonville, Gainesville, all over. They're putting a burden on the beach. They're putting a burden on our tax and aren't sharing the beach with us. So why aren't we all being taxed? Us on the west side, us on the east side, the county, but at least the MSD.
Sure, and so the second question first is really it's a political process to get there. These are the directions that we've had. We have experimented with assessment areas on the other side of A1A and other areas, and we received an extremely negative response. There's different counties, different cities, just people tend to group with different ideas, and it has not been fruitful in this area. That's not to say that it couldn't be done. That is something that is within the powers of the board to do it. But these are the tools that we have in the toolbox right now, is just the oceanfront property owners. The first question is about the erosion control line. So currently that property line is the water line, but the erosion control line sets it in place. And the intention is that you keep, the water away from that line. So now there's dry beach, and but if it does erode past that, your property line is still the erosion control line until there's no project that's underway. And that the movement of the line is just part of oceanfront property ownership in the state of Florida, and it's not a county policy at all. So that's where legally the property line is, and this is the process we have to go through in order to place sand seaward of it. even though you may have had, and we're finding some properties, really the mean high water line hasn't receded that much in some areas. But, sorry, I just lost my
It's
track
also
there.
what you have to do to
Yeah,
get state funding.
it's what you have to do for state funding as well. It kind of comes along with the state funding. But basically, I know what it was. If you're going to place sand seaward of the current high tide line, and they didn't establish an erosion control, and this is kind of just the background of why they have the erosion control requirement, is that it would add property to that upland property. And so the state feels right now, this is the property line. You just have to set a time when you're going to do it and then fix that so that there's not the confusion that now I have, you know, an extra 200 feet in front of me and I'm going to build another house seaward of this house. So yes, and they cannot interfere with your riparian rights, which are the rights of access to the water. Can't construct anything there that's going to impair your use of the beach that's in front of your house. So that you still have a lot of those ownership rights. The one right that's frozen in place is the littoral right, which is basically that the line moves with erosion and accretion.
ECL is significantly west of our present property line. Is the county going to address tax changes and so forth to accommodate for that? Because I suspect that's the case with our property. We've lost over 200 feet seaward. So I assume with the ECL being placed, that will memorialize a smaller property. So will the county then accommodate for our property being lost? Taxation being reduced?
The taxation is based on the current value of the property, which reflects its condition. If it's still a buildable area, and by the way, the high tide line is not the same as where the rack line comes. So the high water line is just the still. If it's a completely calm, still day, where does the high tide? It doesn't account for the wave run up, which goes up sometimes 50, 60 feet up the beach from that area. So you might be surprised how far out that mean high water line is now. But we'll have that at the beach. At the ECL meeting where you can see the survey and exactly where that property line is. And it shouldn't, we haven't seen where it's going to interfere with any kind of development rights in the future. And I mean, like there is already ordinances that recognize customary use. So really, seaward of the vegetation, it's not really highly controlled by the property owners anyway.
So we've been asking to bring the beach out and up for years, not keep replacing the dunes, which was just crazy in itself. So this is the right answer.
Okay.
So we have a question from someone who's people participating through Zoom and other means. This is from Michael. Why is it that only oceanfront homeowners are going to be assessed to cover the various shortfalls, while it is possible that oceanfront homeowners will derive some economic benefit through increase in value by all this work? There are far more people that will enjoy and use the renewed beach. Shouldn't all beach users pay a fair share of these assessments, which is along the lines of what we were talking about?
Sure, and I think some of the thought with the oceanfront property owners is that it protects those properties first. The dangers from storms, from storm surge, decrease the further away from the ocean you get. So those first houses on the ocean are the ones that are expected to take the most damage from hurricanes and storm type events. Once it gets to the road, that's other agencies come into play to protect that. The recreational value that's protected of the beaches is a far smaller percentage of the benefits that would accrue from a project like this. There's Michler's Landing. There are some footpaths put in by the MSD in the northern area of the project. But really the lion's share of the benefit of the project accrues to those oceanfront property owners, the properties that are seaward of Ponte Vedra Boulevard. And as we said before, you know, it is possible that, you know, there could be taxing districts that extend on the other side of the road. That's not the direction we have, and that's not the direction we've been told to go in.
Okay. Any other questions from here?
So in terms of approval for moving ahead with the taxing district and the survey, are we looking at majority rules in terms of how many people you need to say yes?
So the taxing districts are in place. Basically, they want to know, do those that are in the existing taxing units, are they willing, if there is some shortfall, which we don't know yet there is, are they willing to participate financially? So we haven't set in there. The board didn't tell us, you know, we want to hear about it if it's over this particular percent. So what has happened in the past is that in other areas that have these type of taxing districts to fund beach projects, is that each commissioner has their own idea of what they want to see, what they're comfortable with supporting. Some of them wanted to see, you know, I want to see a vast majority of people want to participate in this. Really, if we're talking about easements, then we really need a great, you know, it's got to be pretty close to 100% of the easements in order to make this workable. So again, we'll see. Some commissioners are fully comfortable with, you know, the majority of the people have spoken, and of those people, they wanted it. Others are very hesitant, and they want to see, you know, I really want to see a super majority of people. So we leave it open. That's why we have elected board, for them to make judgment calls like that as to what they are comfortable with what is their, you know, their taxation power. Something I know they all take very seriously. And, you know, the way it's been expressed is that, you know, they will assist if the property owners want to tax themselves in order to provide this benefit. I don't think any of them want to be seen as like forcing a tax or, you know, increasing taxes. It's that this is a tool that we have that helps communities to, you know, get the project over the line funding wise, so that it's a thing that can happen.
Okay. Well, I'm walking over there. One other question we just got from someone watching on Zoom. Are the previous easements that have been signed at last restoration still valid for this project?
So if we're referring to the FEMA berms that we did in 2020, 2021, no. Those were temporary construction easements. They had a duration that has expired, and they were specific to that project. Having complete, you know, we were very, very close to the final properties and completion when we had Ian and Nicole, is what really prompted us to ask, and a lot of you have seen the easements. We will work with you on timeframes, but we've asked for a perpetual easement for those, that work that's, you know, seaward of the dunes and that type of thing. So yes, these are separate easements that the scope is broad enough that it allows the project that we're talking about tonight, as well as if there are opportunities for those smaller dune repair projects in the future. And, you know, check with us if you're unsure whether you have an easement that covers the project or not. Get with the contact information that we had up before, and we'll help to confirm whether you do or do not have that easement.
That's all right. Thank you. We're kind of new to the area, so we're catching up on a lot of stuff here. But one of the things we learned from the last, I guess it was the FEMA berms, is that what you called it?
Yes.
That Ian took away from us. When the surveyors were out, they explained to me what they were going to do, and they showed me where they were going to put the sand, and they didn't put it there. But in the process, I had to lift my walkway. I'm not asking for sympathy, guys. I feel blessed to be who I am, where I am. But so I went through the construction costs of raising my walkway, because where they told me they were going to put the sand would have covered my walkway. Okay. Well, they didn't do that. They put it on the seaward side of the second dune, so we're blessed to have 2 dunes in front of us. So when they realized they made a mistake, I talked to the county, and they said, oh yeah, we did mess up, it's supposed to go over there. We'll come fix that, but we can't fix it until all the turtles hatch, which leads to my question. When I saw your timeline, it would have suggested you're going to be doing this during turtle season. Well, it always happens that way. It would suggest that it's during turtle season, which, had we not had to deal with that to fix the mistake that the sand guys did, I might not have lost as much sand as has been referred to here this evening. So I guess this long-winded question is, what about the turtles?
So in order to do these projects, as we did in the FEMA berm projects, is we have to have monitors on site daily looking for sea turtle nests. So these are folks that have a permit to do this work from the Florida Wildlife Commission with the approval of National Fish and Wildlife. So they're experts in how to handle turtles and turtle eggs. And so they will check every morning, and if a nest has been laid in the project area, they will dig up those eggs, carefully handle them in a very specific way. I learned that if you turn the egg slightly, it can, damage the viability of the turtle. It's like very exacting. And then they move those to a safe area. I will say that you cannot work in turtle season in South Florida because there's so many nests. I mean, it's many more than we have. So working during turtle season in North Florida actually gives us a competitive advantage. And we've seen, we monitor, we do the projects, and we look at nesting, and nesting has been doing well after the projects. What's been happening has been working.
As a quick follow-up, easement, I think I understand, is a parallel beach concept, as opposed to accessing the beach. One of my neighbors is also from Brazil, and he has concerns about the easement as being accessed through his property as opposed to access to the beach. I'll tell him the answer, but he was wondering about that.
That's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. I should have brought that up during my presentation, but no, these do not grant access. None of these easements allow anybody to walk through the property to get to the beach. So it is only they work from the beach on the beach. So they have to, come through some other access point. A lot of the stuff comes for these type of projects is floated in. The pipe, they seal both ends so it floats and drags it by a boat and put it on the shore. But it doesn't allow anybody to come up in the yard or anything like that. There are surveyors, and they may come and put a unit near your house that, just very cautiously, but a little box that will detect vibration. So they can make sure that there isn't any kind of harmful vibrations. Honestly, there really aren't for these type of projects, but it's customary that we do that just to be able to show that, here's the data. It's not actually, large enough to hurt anything. You will probably feel it. When a bulldozer's on the beach, you'll feel some slight vibration, but it won't be anything hazardous. But that's the only reason that anybody would come up there. And, Florida surveyors are allowed to come on private property to survey. So the easement doesn't give any right for anything, any kind of access across the property.
So another question we have from a remote participant. In communities like Sawgrass Country Club that have oceanfront property, how will the club be assessed? And what about those of us who are members in that club but also have oceanfront property within the club grounds? Are we going to have to pay twice, once as homeowners and again as a share of club costs?
So it is up to the club how they will distribute those costs, but there are entities like the Sawgrass Club which have taxable value on the ocean, and it's within the MSTU, and they would see that assessment on their tax bill. So however they determine to allocate that amongst their membership is a separate issue with them. But yes, if you have a house that's on the ocean, that it has a separate tax bill. You would see it on that tax bill. If you're a member of the club that also has a tax bill, you would see it on that tax bill.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, okay, let me go back over here. And like we said before, there will be an opportunity to speak with these guys after the meeting in the back corner.
So as far as the MSD, they did not put out any emails or flyers that this was going on. It looks like that this is the result of it. Is there some reason why they usually do it about traffic lights being out or something that's less important?
So we did send out information to all of the oceanfront property owners. It wasn't shouted out in a big public way because this is really, the main discussion is with the property owners that are going to be affected by this, who are going to be asked to provide a survey and an easement. So the MSD didn't contact me and ask me my opinion on that. I don't know what their thinking was, but we really just invited oceanfront property owners and folks west of Ponte Vedra Boulevard.
So with that said, that wraps up this part of the meeting, and like I said, they will be available after the meeting in the back corner. There's also information in the back right corner as well. But thank you very much for coming out tonight.